Good evening. I'm Isaac Ben Ezra, host and co-producer of Conversations. This is the last in a series on library trustees. The election is taking place on April 3rd here in Amherst. And I have with me one of three candidates for a three-year position. And her name is Carol Gray, and she's seeking re-election to the board. Good to see you came back healthy from Egypt.
Yes, thanks.
We had an opportunity at another time to talk about her family experience in Egypt during the revolution. But now we're going to get back to little old Amherst and the Jones Library. And I'm going to ask you, even though you're seeking re-election, to approach this from the point of view that there are a lot of people in the community who don't know every trustee and don't know what trustees do.
Sure.
So let's start with saying, first of all, who are you?
Okay. My name's Carol Gray, and I've been a trustee for 3 years, and I also teach. I teach at Greenfield Community College, and before that I was a public defender, and I have a 7-year-old, and our family lives in South Amherst. And I'm also a town meeting member, and I'm on the town meeting coordinating committee. And I've really loved serving the libraries. It's been a great experience. I've learned so much, and I feel like I've participated in a lot of great projects with the library, and there's a lot more to do. So I hope that I'll get the chance to continue.
Many people don't understand the role of a board, and particularly a library board. Could you spell out what the legal and
Sure.
Other requirements are?
Right. So the Jones Library, Inc. is a nonprofit, and the board has 6 members. I'm one of 6. And the board has several different roles. There's actually a statewide organization called the Massachusetts Association of Library Commissioners, and they have a handbook that lays out the role of trustees. And that handbook includes several parts to our role. One part is to determine the needs in the community of the library, and then help ensure that there are programs to provide those needs. We don't manage the library, that's the library director, but we're kind of a liaison with the community and with staff. We work very closely with the library director. And another role is that we fundraise and advocate for the library. We have wonderful libraries, but they really need funding. And we're in the middle of an annual fund drive, so if anyone hasn't yet donated to the Jones, we would love it if you would think about doing that. And we present our budget to town meeting, so the board gets the budget from the library director, and we ask questions. We may do tweaks here or there, but the director drafts the budget, and then we pass it along to the town and the finance committee and town hall, and then town meeting approves the budget. Other things that we do are we do a long-range plan for the library, and I was on the long-range planning committee a couple of years ago. It's a 5-year plan, and what that entails is looking at everything the library is currently doing, seeing where we want to go in the future, and figuring out what are some goals to get there, goals on an annual basis. And that 5-year plan has 1-year action plans that you revisit each year. So one of the things that I did being on the long-range planning committee, and that committee was composed of 2 trustees, the library director, and a staff member. And we surveyed the community, asking them, what would you like to see in your libraries? What's working well? What needs improvement? What do you think? I'm a big supporter of the branches of the North Amherst branch and the Munson Library. Any comments about these? And so we took all these surveys, we got a couple hundred from the public, and then we factored that into crafting a long-range plan to try to address those goals. For example, one of the goals that was very popular among the community was more hours for the libraries. And I'm a big supporter of more hours, especially in economic hard times. That's when libraries are more essential than ever. People need them. Some people, this is where they go look at the newspaper. This may be where they have internet. Libraries are a community hub, and that's one of the things I love about them. They're about much more than books and audio tapes. They're a place where all people come together, all classes, all races, they're really a treasure in our community, and we have an excellent historic collection. I invite anybody who hasn't visited the special collections section. There's a wonderful display of Emily Dickinson archival material, and anyway, so we were really lucky to have wonderful libraries, and so the trustees serve in all these ways to try to help the libraries be as good as they can be, and to work with staff and the director.
And this is a logical time to say, if you just tuned in, that I'm talking with Carol Gray. Carol Gray is presently a trustee at the Jones Library, and is one of 3 candidates for a 3-year position. And the election takes place on April the 3rd, Tuesday, April 3rd, between 7 and 8 p.m. So the other thing I might mention right now is all of the candidates have been interviewed, and they're going to be online starting in the next week or so.
Great.
So that even if you don't catch it during our usual showing times, they'll be available, and so you'll have an opportunity to have this conversation through me with Carol Gray and the other candidates.
Great.
Let's talk about those other things that have evolved in the library that makes it sort of, in your words, almost a community center.
So I first started getting to know our libraries because I have a young child, and so I started learning about all these wonderful programs. As a mother of a baby, I went to Singing with Your Baby, and then I went to there's a wonderful children's concert series.
These are programs in existence when you arrived.
Yes, and they're still going on now, and they're funded by the Friends of the Jones Library.
So let's flush that out. I think this offers an opportunity for people to know what's going on at the library.
Definitely. So for children's programs, as I mentioned, there's Singing with Your Baby. There's this musical concert series that happens every spring. I think the last one is just coming up this Saturday, and it's free. These are all free. There's also a chess club that my son goes to once a month, and that's wonderful. There's also free museum passes. You can go and get a pass to most of the regional museums, get them for free, even the zoo in Springfield.
Is this just for children?
No, anyone can do this. You can get passes to Old Deerfield, and these are all funded by the Friends of the Jones Library, which is a nonprofit that works with the library and helps fund all these wonderful programs. So they're doing wonderful service for the library, and they're kind of complementary to the Board of Trustees. They're their own separate board. And the library also has a lot of different lectures that happens there. It's a wonderful meeting place. On the Town Meeting Coordinating Committee, we just had an introduction to town meeting to try to teach people about town meeting, and we had it at the library. Everyone knows this is a great place to meet, and it's also a big draw for the downtown. It's a big economic asset to the town because people come to the library and they park and they shop and they go for coffee and they do any number of things. So it's a real magnet. Other things, my family does the art walk every month. My son enjoys going to visit all these different galleries, and the Burnett Gallery is in the library, and that's always on the art walk. There are also, we have wonderful staff at the library, so if people need help with any issue, they can go to the reference librarians, and they're excellent at pointing people in the right direction. If people are going to apply for jobs online, there are people that can help guide them through the computer networks. It's just a terrific resource. And there's even more developing with electronic resources, books on tape, electronic books. There's our historic part, the Special Collections Division, developed this amazing website called Digital Amherst, and they got, I think, a national award for it. And you can type in Digital Amherst on the Jones Library website, and it will take you there, and you can go to all these different centuries and see original materials that have been entered into the archive. So it's just a wonderful resource in so many different ways.
So what are the challenges in 2012?
So, well, funding is always a challenge for all libraries, and we were fortunate in this budget year that it's not as tight as a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, as people know, all budgets were being cut, the school budget, the library budget, and when budgets get cut, you have to figure out what gets cut. And so one of the things that got cut a couple of years ago was Friday afternoons at the Jones Library. But the board thought, this is so essential, let's fundraise to put Friday afternoons back into the schedule. So we did. And the Harp was kind enough to offer a fundraiser for us and donated this beautiful barbecue. And we fundraised thousands of dollars, and we reopened on Friday afternoons, Friday afternoons is a particularly critical time because teens love the library, which we're thrilled about. It's great that our teens all flock to the library after school, particularly Friday afternoons. But then you need programs for them because it's challenging to have a lot of teens, but without some programs. So we also worked on applying for a teen grant. We didn't get it the first year, but it's something you can keep applying for that would give $20,000 to the library just for programming. At one point when the teens were being a little more enthusiastic than some had liked, I was suggesting, well, let's get the teens organized and try to figure out ways that they can guide their own programming. So I helped to host a pizza party for the teens. And they came out of the woodwork. You offer pizza, free pizza, and teens just come from everywhere. So the teens all flocked to the library, and then we circulated a sheet to see if any teens would like to sign up to be part of book clubs, to be part of a teen advisory board. A lot of libraries have teens helping to guide teen programming with teens.
Do you have teen volunteers?
We have teens involved in different book clubs. I don't know that we have volunteers. Probably some older teens are involved with book shelving and things like that. But I would love to see us in the future have a teen advisory board. And I'd love us to have a teen room, a designated room just for teens. I've visited several other libraries that have this, and they're flourishing, and the teens love them, and the adults love them because it gives the teens a special place that they can be enthusiastic and not distract other people who are quietly reading. So I'm hoping with some reconfiguration of space in the library, that's one of the big challenges, redoing space, that maybe we'll have room for a teen room. And maybe a cafe. I'm excited that our new director, Sharon Sherry, who's wonderful, she's so enthusiastic, and she's been at many different libraries, so she comes with a wealth of knowledge. And she really likes the idea of having a cafe, like not a cafe in the sense that we'd have not a Starbucks in the library, but at least a cafe area, maybe some machines where people could get coffee. And other libraries have this, and it's a big draw. People like to be able to come and
Is there space?
There could be space. The building, the third floor of the library is very underutilized. If you move things around, you could have space. Mm-hmm.
So is that now being considered?
Yes, it is.
Is there a
yes.
plan for expanding the library?
There's not a plan, but there's exploration. There's people coming, the director is meeting with people who are very knowledgeable about space issues and walking through the building and collecting ideas from staff. And I think that within the next year or two, there will be some more concrete plans that could really help the Jones for 50 to 100 years down the road.
Now, we've talked about the Jones, but before we go to the other libraries,
mm-hmm.
the one in North Amherst and the one
right.
in South Amherst, what's the state of the property, the material? Do we have unforeseen problems? Do we have big problems in terms of maintenance? Because when we talk about expansion, we also have to talk about maintaining what we have.
Right, definitely. Well, and what I was just telling you in terms of looking at the use of space, you can do that without expanding. You can do that just inside with the building itself, using all the floors to the maximum benefit. The building itself is a wonderful old building, and another thing that's very useful is that the older part of the building has been designated as a historic landmark, and that means it qualifies for funding with the Community Preservation Act Committee. And so we have routinely applied for funding to do things like replace parts of the slate roof that were falling off, which you don't want slate roofs to fall off, because slate falling on the ground with people walking by is not a good thing, and it's not good for the roof either. Anyway, so we now have a project with restoring the chimneys at the Jones Library. And I was very active with the North Amherst Library, when I first got on the board, we were applying for funds to repaint the library. And if you drive by, you'll notice that it's lovely in these historic colors. People color coded exactly to match the historic colors. And another thing that I did with the North Amherst branch and the Jones is I'm very interested in green initiatives and energy conservation. So I had an energy, I helped to facilitate an energy audit of the Jones Library. There hadn't been one done for about a decade or so, and they recommended additional insulation. And then we also arranged for people to look at the North Amherst Library to see what the insulation was there, and we discovered there's virtually no insulation in the North Amherst Library. So right now we have proposals before the Joint Capital Planning Committee to get insulation for both the North Amherst Library and the Jones. And that
How about Munson? What's the situation?
The Munson Library is also a wonderful building. It's not actually owned by the Jones Library, Inc. It's owned by the town. So we rent it from the town. But actually just today, I'm a member of the Joint Capital Planning Committee. I'm one of the two library representatives to that committee. And I just learned that they are doing, the town's doing a lot of upgrading of the Jones. They're working on having the heating and lighting system be more automated and hooked into the town system. They are redoing the steps and going to take the old Pelham stones and reincorporate them into the sides, but make the steps safer because they're a little uneven now, and for safety purposes and aesthetics, they need to be redone. So all three libraries are, we're constantly looking at how to keep them in the best shape possible.
How about staffing, especially the one outside of the Jones Library?
Yeah, so I love the branch libraries, and I would love for them to be open more hours. And I think the residents...
Well, is this something the community wants?
Yes. Yes, when we did the...
Because, so I think it's, I was going to ask earlier, what was some of the feedback about libraries?
Exactly.
And that probably is number one.
That's more hours across the board for all the libraries, branches and the Jones, was one of the top responses on the long-range survey, long-range plan survey that we did of the community. And I live in South Amherst, so I go to the Munson Library, and I know people in that community, they love the library. They'd love it to be open as much as possible. North Amherst, I visit that library occasionally, and it's a wonderful library. It's got a lot of resources packed in a very small space. One of the things I'd love to see happen with the North Amherst Library, and this was also, there was significant community support for this as well on the long-range planning survey, was doing some renovations to that building that would make it handicap accessible and put in public restrooms. And there's also the possibility of applying for a library construction grant through the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners that would cover 60% of a renovation that could include adding an entire room. Like I think it'd be wonderful if that library had a community room in addition to public restrooms and handicap accessibility. There really isn't a good meeting place in North Amherst. When people in the community want to come together and have a meeting, it would be wonderful if the library could fulfill that role. And this is the movement nationwide to having libraries be community centers as well as a place to check out books is, I think, a really valuable thing. And it's also part of having a sustainable community. It's about creating village centers in areas where people can walk or drive in a short amount of time. And so having the North Amherst branch and the Munson be strong, vibrant places is really in everyone's interest.
On that note, I want to take a breather because I've lost track of time. So this is a good stopping point to find out how much more time do we have.
We've got, I think, another 10 minutes or so.
Okay, thank you.
Are we still filming now? No.
We're doing fine.
Okay.
We've covered so much ground already,
Yes,
so
yes.
let's get back to we've had a good picture of what we need in terms of the future, and where's the money going to come from?
So glad you brought that up.
It's a silly question, but
it's a very,
keeps getting asked.
it's a critical question, actually.
And what have you done regarding that?
So The role, I think, of a library trustee regarding money has many different layers. One is to propose a library budget to the town and then explain why it's essential, why that amount of money is what's necessary to keep the library staffed as the public needs and wants them to be. I'm a town meeting member, and I've been a town meeting member for half a decade or more. And so that I was advocating for funding for the libraries even before I became a library trustee. I've always advocated for strong libraries. But then there's also other areas where you can get funding. For example, the Community Preservation Act Committee. Because the library, the Jones, is a historic building, and so is the North Amherst Library, you can request funds for particular projects from them. For example, I mentioned that I'd love to see the North Amherst Library be handicap accessible. Well, the Community Preservation Act of the state says that you can get funding from that committee for renovations that involve making things handicap accessible.
Has this been discussed during your tenure?
Oh yes, we've discussed it.
Where is it in terms of action at this point?
Well, there's a whole range of projects. Like insulation was another thing we proposed for the North Amherst Library. The handicap accessibility for that building would have to be part of a broader plan. Like, for example, if we wanted to apply for a library grant, that's it's a long process. It takes a number of years to go through the whole grant proposal. We just got a new director, so she's doing a wonderful job learning the ropes, and so we're still exploring how that would happen.
But that's on the table now.
I've been bringing it up. There's not a concrete plan or grant applied for, but if I am elected to a second term, it's one of the things that I would like to try to have a plan for and to try to get a grant for. But you asked about other funding ideas. So the Joint Capital Planning Committee, that's another way that the library receives funding, and I'm on that committee. And what that means is the town has funding each year for capital projects of all the different departments. And the library is a part of the town. Even though it's a separate nonprofit, it's also kind of a hybrid. The library staff are also town staff. So we get some funding from the town. For example, when a couple of years ago on the board, I helped bring in an engineer who did a whole assessment of the needs of the library in terms of engineering needs, in terms of safety, in terms of she looked at the whole, she also did an analysis of geothermal versus keeping the system that we have. And she was an MIT engineer and did this wonderfully detailed analysis of what we need for the future. One of the things that came up in that study was that the fire system is antiquated, and so we need to get the fire system up to code, and so that's one of the things we're proposing for funding from the town, from the capital budget. So, and then there's also ways of getting funding by partnering with the business community. We have a wonderfully helpful business community here. The library has just become part of the Business Improvement District. Well, it was one of the original signers, but it's part of that group. And I love that our library director, when she came from Greenfield, and there she did this whole project with business owners where they would all be sitting with a poster, holding a book that says read, and then these posters were made and they were put all around town with all these business owners. So it advertised the business. These were also published in the newspaper. And so it was great publicity for the library, for the business, and the paper was gracious enough to donate the space in the paper. So I'd love to see more initiatives with the business community. Also, one of the things that I participated in a couple of years ago was looking to going to talk to business owners to see what in-kind donations might be possible. And we discovered when we went to visit one business that does printing for us that they absolutely love the library, and they were very kind to donate a portion of the printing costs for our annual fund drive. And so that's been a really great thing. There's also, though, lobbying that needs to be done on the regional and the state level. So every year I go to the legislative breakfast that's hosted for library trustees all over the state, or at least the western part of the state. And our legislators come to those breakfasts, and we tell them how much we appreciate their support for funding and how essential it is that we keep that funding. And then they go and they lobby for us on Capitol in Boston. And so, and then there's also there's a conference that's Stan Rosenberg organizes that's all about the governor's budget, and all public officials are invited to that. And I've gone to that, and also asked questions from the floor about support for the libraries. So advocating for funding is many different layers. And I mean, fortunately, we have such great libraries, and people do love them so much that it's an easy sell in some sense, because everyone knows that they really are a gem for our community.
Are you ready for April 3rd?
Well,
You're getting around?
I've worked very hard for 3 years, and I feel like there are a number of projects that I'd like to see through, and I'd like to, one of the things that I was part of when I first came on a couple of years ago is I helped form a green committee for the library. And we put together the library's first sustainability plan. And I would like to, I'm also on the Buildings and Facilities Committee, and we're going to be looking at this plan and see how can we help implement more green initiatives in the library. I'm also the chair of the Budget Committee, and on that committee, we're looking at more long-term goals for the library. For example, what's the best way to manage the endowment of the library that preserves it in perpetuity, but also provides enough income to the library to keep the services that we need.
And we're running out of time.
Okay.
But you're finishing on a perfect note. So I'm talking with Carol Gray.
Oh. Can I tell them that I have a website?
Well, yeah, you have it.
So I have a website.
She has a website.
So if you want to learn,
we'll put it on as part of the presentation.
Great.
Carol.
Thank you so much, Isaac.
Thank you. Good luck.
Okay.
April 3rd, Tuesday, 7 to 8 p.m. It's your opportunity to elect the trustees for the board, the library, as well as school committee members.
And they get 2 votes for the 3-year seat, so they could
Okay.
vote for me and somebody else if they.
Thanks for telling me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to the staff. Thanks to the students. See you next week. Good night.
Thank you.